So here's our main script function file, scripting.c. We include all the standard Lua stuff. And we define our Lua state. Just have our main Lua state. Then we got some helper functions, run a string, a little Lua script command. Oh, good, you are there. Um, run a file, just a regular Lua file, and run a function in a file that's already been loaded or run, same thing. And also you can run a method on a Lua object. We probably won't use that if we can avoid it. That's just a helper function. These are new functions. Now these are pretty important here. So Lua has a stack. If you ever used the fourth language, it's kind of like that. Except it's got C syntax, but the API to call Lua functions from C is kind of like fourth. Or actually, C is kind of like that too. Behind the scenes, you're just pushing stuff on a stack. But Lua has its own stack. It has a function. There's a function called Lua set top, and you can just put Lua set top L comma 0, and that will clear the stack. It just sets the top index to 0. And normally you refer to like the stack counts up from 0, 1, 2 from the bottom up, and the top of the stack you can use negative numbers to count down from the top. So -1 is the top, -2 is the next one below that. So that's how we tend to refer to these stack positions, by negative numbers. And then these functions get field. You push a table on the stack, and then you call script get field with a table key, and a fallback is your default value. So say you're looking for you push the stats table on the stack, and then you look for the strength key and get its value. That's how we would use this. And that's for an integer, that's for a string, and that's for a table within a table, and that's for a vector. So once you start getting more complicated structures, like you have an array table which has 3 components. Now Lua it's complicated because its tables are a hybrid of arrays and dictionaries. So you basically can have an array table or a dictionary table or a mixed table, which is really confusing. And we try not to do that. I'm going to try to avoid that in this game. It just makes everything more troublesome. So let's see, what are you saying? In this context, stack is the giant table of data. No, the stack is just an array it's an array in Lua, so it's variant data types. It can be a number, a string, or a table. Each element can be one of those 3 things, and it's an array and an index. So let's find a good example of, like, here's how you push a vector on the stack. This creates a new table on the top of the stack. So say the stack is empty. You do a Lua new table that creates an array in the first stack slot. Then we do push number. So that pushes another argument on the stack, and this time it's a floating point number. And it's the x value from this vector 3 that we're passing in. And then we call this function, which raw set I, which takes a number at on the top of the stack, and it expects to find a table on the next item below that. Then it looks for the first element in that table and stores that other number into it. So we push that on the top and then store it into the first slot in that table. Then we do the same thing with the Y and Z. And then let's see. Then that table remains on the stack so you can do something with it. So let's find an example where we're actually using that. God mode. Here we go. We're using it once. So when we go to create a new NPC, this is a thing I added over the weekend. You press N in God mode and it we create a new point. Well, this is our cursor position, and we make sure that's snapped to the floor, and then we push that onto the stack, and then we call this function create NPC, which takes it expects to have one thing on the stack and it returns nothing. And then we go back over to this where's run function? Right here. So it takes one argument and returns none, and we just pass those numbers to a Lua P call, which is a protected call, so it'll return a number other than 0 if there's a problem, or other than OK, which I assume that's 0. And let's see, what else? What's this Lua insert? I don't know what that is exactly, but it works. Here, we're just looking up the function by name, checking a few things and running it, and then checking for errors. And we print out some error messages if there's a problem, and I'm trying to figure out how to do a trace back, but that's not quite right. But I know it can be done. So yeah, let's see. That's how you call a function from C. This is how you call from C to a Lua function. And that Lua function is defined over here right here. It's just a regular Lua function. It takes an argument, which Lua's untyped, dynamically typed. So this code just assumes that it's a table, and yeah, it doesn't really do any checking, although we could check to make sure it's an array of 3. So godmode.c inherits scripting. No, it doesn't. There's no inheritance in here. It's just plain C. It's not even object-oriented C, really. We just have these structures here. NPC interactable, my camera, which is kind of a temporary thing. Teams for turn-based, save state for save files, settings, and game data, like overall game state, kind of a container for everything else. So God mode, when you go into God mode, then this runs off of the main loop. That's it. So if you press the N key, it creates an NPC and does this stuff. And this is just for moving objects around. It doesn't do anything with Lua yet. And we'll have to get to that. We'll have to have a thing where you when you get done here, let's actually make a to-do. Update object in Lua. So this is what happens when you create an NPC. And this is a good example because because what this does is it just creates a table. This is a key value table, so it's got an ID, a name, which is just new NPC number, whatever to start with, and a location, which is just a translation or position. And I don't even set the rotation yet because that'll just assume it's 0. And so we just do that. We insert it into our NPCs table. We index it also by ID. And then we call load NPC. And we just pass this structure, this table. It's a nested table structure. It's got location and maybe some other tables in it. We just pass that to load NPC, which is the same function we use to when we're loading a scene. We can see that over here. So I'm going over to my main Lua script here. We've got load and save JSON functions. We've got that's for loading the dialogue data. This is for loading a level, and then at the end of the level loading, we create one random NPC. That's a C function, and then we loop over the NPCs, and anything that's in this level that has a location gets loaded. So we just pass that data right to the load NPC function. So just to be clear, that data we're talking about is this, all of this. And then when we get to C, we're only going to look at a few of these things, like the ID, the name, and the location. So now we're going to go over to C. I think it's this file here where we define that function. And the way Lua knows how to call that is we have this script init function that I call at the beginning of the program pretty early on. And we're just pushing the function. This is a C. This is just the C function pointer. So we're just pushing a pointer to the function onto the Lua stack using this push C function function. And then we call Lua set global, and there's one for load NPC. And that's the core. So it just says that when you run this command in Lua, we're going to call this function in C. So then we go over to, where was that? Human.c. And here's script load NPC. And then we just, let's see, we get a new NPC, initialize it in C, and then we call script get field integer. So we're getting the ID and assigning it to this variable in our NPC structure, and it's going to be -1 if it's missing somehow for some reason. Then we're getting the name from this structure in Lua. We get the name, and here's how we get the position and rotation. Now if the rotation isn't found, then what does it do? That's a good question. Does it fail? No, I know it works. So, oh yeah, so we create a result vector 3 with that's initialized to 0, 0, 0. Then we get the rotation. So if there's a key called rotation in here under location, if there's one called rotation, we're going to fetch that. Yeah, these three all have it, but if it was missing, this would just return 0, 0, 0. So where is it? Here in scripting.c. Now, these are all my script. These are all my files. This is not part of some library that you could use. But you can make your own library like this. And if you look for Lua examples, with C interfacing, you will find some stuff like this. You might want to screenshot some of this stuff from my stream if you want to do a Lua interface like this. I mean, I'm happy to share this kind of stuff, but the easiest way is just to screenshot it. And well, let's see. Like if I start talking about some boring shit or I take a break, just go back and screenshot it. And I'll probably post a clip of this also, just this 10 or 20 minutes going over this, and upload that. I'll upload that to Rumble and YouTube. And let's see. Anyway, so that's the load NPC function. So we get the name from Lua, and then we have to copy it into our C variable. And just to keep things simple, I think I did it's not dynamically allocated. It's just where's NPC? Yeah, it's just 64 characters max. So the data in NPCs.json looks like a data mapping. Is it a true C mapping? No, this is just a text file. And so that's just a text file. And then over here in syn3.lua, we call, where do we load NPCs? Right here. We say NPCs equals load JSON, that file name. And then that just does this. So we open the file, read it all into this, this is a file handle. And then we call this to read all the text in it into this variable t, and then we pass that through this JSON decode function and return the result. So that just converts this into a Lua structure. Into Lua, and Lua is it's like JavaScript. So this is JavaScript object notation. Lua is almost the same. Lua is almost the same, except it doesn't really make a distinction between key value objects and like flat arrays. Like, this is an array in JavaScript, and this is an object. This is an object. This is an object in JavaScript, and this is an array. And Lua treats them both the same. It's kind of sketchy, but whatever, it works. So we load the whole thing into Lua, and then we just look at pieces of it in C. That's how I'm handling this. I'm never loading this whole thing into my C data structures. I just don't want to deal with that. We just grab stuff from the Lua tables when we need it. So essentially it stays in this format the whole time. We can edit things in here, save it back out to JSON. It keeps things pretty simple. And there's nothing in the background that's like adding stuff to these tables like in some frameworks you might use. This is all under our control. So that's pretty nice. And the hardest part is just accessing it from C, like this. And once you write a few helper functions, like I've got over here in my scripting file, these wait, is it the get? Not those. These are my new functions. Once you write a few helper functions like this, It's pretty easy to get that stuff. It's pretty easy to read those tables from C. So again, they're called, in Lua, they're called tables. In JavaScript, they would be called objects and arrays. In Python, they would be called dictionaries and lists. And yeah, so that's how we get the position into C, and then we just load all our models, and this is just a bunch of crap here, just ignore that. And here's where we get the colors from Lua. And this is probably the most complicated part here. And this is how you loop over a table in Lua. Yeah, now you get it. It stays in Lua. Yeah, the data stays in Lua, and we only temporarily bring things into C. Like in Lua, we have all the data in the game world gets loaded into Lua. So all the NPCs, no matter what level they're, no matter what map or level or city they're in, they'll get loaded in. This whole file gets loaded into a data structure. All the items and objects in the game, they all get loaded into a structure. All the dialogue is in here with the NPCs, at least for now. And then in C, it's just a game engine. It's just an engine for rendering the current level or the current scene. So in Lua, we have this load level function, and what that does is it unloads the current scene. That calls a function in C that just unloads everything, frees all the memory, it resets everything to 0, and then we load the JSON data, and somewhere in here, yeah, and here's where we load the actual scene itself. Then we load all the objects, we load all their models, and we just load all that stuff into C, into the current scene, and then we load the NPCs into it. And then at some point we're going to have to add something to unload level that will, if we want to remember where any NPCs are, we'll have to save their positions back out to the Lua. So this will call unload level as a C function. And then we can have that call back into Lua to update the NPC's information. And that would be, how do we do that again? We've got create NPC. I guess it's in this file here. The character customization user interface. Yeah, so when we customize an NPC or the player, or actually for now it's just the NPCs, not the player. So when we customize anything, when we customize an NPC, we write their current position, rotation, colors, and colors. And we call this function update NPC parameters, which is, where is that? It's either here or I think it's over here. Right there. And we just merge those parameters. We just merge this data into the main data. So that just loops over everything in this input structure and finds the corresponding thing in the existing data or creates it if it doesn't exist, and it just copies everything over that's been updated. Pretty simple. And then we have the save NPCs function that saves JSON. It just writes everything out back to that NPCs file. It just writes that back out. And let's look at that for a second. So we can use that this simple JSON encoder or this more complicated one that makes prettier output, but it's really a clusterfuck and it's glitchy. And but it's useful at this stage. But we're gonna switch to the other one. I've got a modified version of it. And let me just show you those two. So this is my modified one, and it's very lightly modified, and yeah, that's all it is. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 pages, 5 or 6 screenfuls of code. It's very compact. Then the other one, this big clusterfuck, it's huge for what it is. It's 1,800 lines of code. There's a lot of comments in there, but still it's kind of overcomplicated. I would say it's not that bad. It's not that complicated, but if I'm going to use something that complicated, I expect it to work. Yeah. So anyway, I hope I've answered your questions, and it's good for me to go over this stuff too, because I've been working on this. It's kind of new to me at this point. I'm still deciding on the best way to deal with some of this stuff, but we might want to consolidate some of these functions into one. We might want to move a bunch of this stuff over to the scripting module here. I don't know. And the other thing that I was working on is I've talked about this before a couple weeks ago. So this is for the stats. So I define this enum with a bunch of, it's basically just index numbers for every variable. And yeah, maybe we're not gonna use that after all. I don't like that. I think it's easy enough. I think it's easier to do it the way I was doing it before, or the way I was doing it over in here. Like where is the part where we get the name and the ID? Yeah, we just say get field. We can say get field. We can say push subtable stats, and then get field strength, get field dexterity, and so on, when we need to. And that could be when you load an NPC into the scene, when you after you've leveled up or something. Maybe when you start combat. No, we're not going to have a combat phase, but anytime something could have changed, we'll just have to refetch all that information from Lua. So, the stats, in other words. So, yeah, we're gonna scrap that, I think. And just really keep that stuff in Lua.